Hi guys, it's Vicki Ross. Got plenty of light, I think, and we're going to go for it. I'm working with Twinkling H20s, and here's my color chart of what I have. I have a beautiful picture of some orchids from paintmyphoto.com. The very first thing I'm going to do after these, this isn't the very first thing, hello. What I did first was sketched, how am I going to do this and get this in the camera? I guess I'm going to have to put my colors over here. There. I've sketched my photo here, and this is 12 by 18 Arches watercolor paper, cold press. And I have blocks. And I sketched my drawing here. I always draw and I plan my composition based on thirds. Tic-tac-toe. I would print a picture to size. So in other words, if I was working on 12 by 18, I would have my picture 12 by 18. And then I would take, and both of them I would mark off in 1-inch increments over the whole thing. Then what you do is take a pencil and you draw what is in that square. Well, I graduated to bigger and bigger squares. And now I can pretty much start from a little plus sign where the thirds are, and I can pretty well tell. Now, portrait painting, I don't do it that way anymore. But for florals, no two flowers look alike, so it's not critical. The next thing I'm going to try, and this is new for me, so I'm going to try this on a, this is the 9x12 pad. Now I want to do a halo, and man, is that ever bright. I want a very pale halo. If you look close, you can see where I drew the orchid once before. And I could have wet the entire piece of paper, which I think I'm going to do now. I just want to get an idea of what these paints do on arches. And since I'm going to be painting my real painting on arches, I wanted to test this. This is a Raphael, or I'm sorry, Isabey, God, I forgot what they call these, cat's tongue. It comes to, it's a little bit like a filbert, which is a long brush that's rounded on the corners, but this one's rounded and actually comes to a point. So it's a very nice brush. This is Isabey 6235 in a size 4, which is roughly 1/2 inch at the ferrule. So now you know about that. Now traditionally watercolors dry a little bit lighter, but I want this to be very light. This is not a watercolor technique so much as it is a mixed media technique, just there. Now what happens if you do a sunset type look? Maybe I want my horizon line to be about right in here. You don't ever want your horizon to be halfway. You want it to either be up a little bit or down a little bit. That's just a basic rule of composition, and break it if you choose. You can't put purple. Let's see, I need a purple. I think I'm going to go with Wisteria. Wet it real good. If I put purple on this yellow, or where it will bleed into the yellow, I'm going to get a brown. And I don't want that. So what I do want, though, is a little bit of the orange. And I can spray this again now that I blotted some of the yellow off. And actually I got quite a bit of yellow off. You can see that. And I'm going to paint a horizon line right about in here. Plenty of water. And I'm going to come back with just a little bit of that darker orange right here. Not the darker orange, this is the orange peel. There you go. There you go. Now, if you like drippies, let it drip. Look at that beautiful color. Alright, now we're going to go in with some of the deep coral. And I'm still really wet. Coral, coral, coral. Blot up on the bottom. You can spray it. Whoops, just sprayed it backwards. I'm going to go ahead and try this blue. I may get a muddy mess. I would really like to have a little purple. But I don't really have a true blue. So I'm getting a little bit of green because of the yellow underneath. Here's a little bit of violet. See, I'm picking up mud down here. We're going to see what we get. And this is rainforest. And this is going to knock everybody's socks off. You can still see how wet my paper is. And I don't want any backgrounds. Any place I scar the paper with the paintbrush, the pigment will settle in those marks and it will give you the illusion of some brush or sticks. Now these dry pigments do not have a binder in them. And I'm focusing more on watercolor, so I'm going to get some gum arabic. This is the binder traditionally used with watercolor. This is Winsor Newton Gum Arabic. I've had it forever, so it doesn't go bad. And I'm going to put a little bit, where am I going to put it? I guess I'll just put it right here in my little well. Alright, that's what I was kind of looking for, and I think I'm going to allow that to dry. So bear with me. I started with watercolor many moons ago, and in my quest to be familiar with every medium, because what I kept telling people, or my advisors and mentors and whatnot, how do I know what I want to stick with when I haven't tried them all? And for me, that was a good decision. So I spent 3 or 4 years on watercolor before I tried soft pastel. And I tried soft pastel for 3 or 4 years before I learned oils, and 3 or 4 years with oil. And a year or so on, I'm not doing any good here at all lifting. So that tells me these are pretty staining. Anyway, I didn't leave my white space. So I'm just seeing here if I can lift some of that out. It's important to know whether the paints that you're working on are staining or not. And I'm looking at my old drawing under here, so it's kind of hit or miss anyway. And this is an old brush that don't want to scrub the paper to death either. I'm going to dry it some more. It's still, anytime it's damp, it feels cool to the back of your hand. It's still damp. All these paints have mica, and what I'm wanting to do is see how they react. And of course I can't help mixing. It's in my nature. Is that the blue violet pearl? Now the binder comes in handy because if you use, it's either Pearl X or Perfect Pearls, I don't remember which one. I think it's Pearl X does not have a binder. So when that dries, it will brush right off your paper. So we're just going to do a little experiment and see what happens with this. So therefore the gum arabic might bind it, might provide enough binder to hold it. And it looks like I had some other stuff going on. I just want this to be very, very faint. Delicate. I'm aiming for the delicate here. Because that's what orchids are. They're just perfect. Otherworldly. I want real soft edges, and I want real faint. And the yellow is doing exactly what I thought it would do, and that is kind of shine through. Pearl red. Let's see. I need just a hint of blue. My problem when I was working with watercolor in the beginning was that I was too impatient. And now I'm just, I think I have matured as an artist, let's put it that way. And it doesn't cause any harm to let those drips drip. Sometimes I get two colors on my brush at the same time. This is where Stargazer might come in. Ooh, that's a perfect color for that. What I did was I dipped my brush in, this is just a little brush, I dipped it in the gum arabic, and then just the tip of it in the Stargazer. This is Snapdragon. Stargazer's making me very happy. Remember, I don't have my drawing. This is just freehand, and as it turns out, usually works just as good for me. Need a little bit of this is the shadow going behind the petal. Paper's getting a little bit dry. Ooh, that was the bright orange. Well, you know what? That's not too bad. A little bit of dark. I'm going to come back in with this. I want to darken it just a wee bit. Not too much. These are making absolutely beautiful blends. I bet I won't be hampered by lack of color very long. Spraying it down, boss. Spraying it down. little bit of dry brush going on here. Now that's when, let me pull it closer so you can see it. Right here, where you can see some of the paper through it, I did not have a super wet saturated brush. Where over here, when I'm using a super wet brush, it covers the paper more. Here, it kind of leaves some of the texture of the paper showing, which is fine for the bud, I think. Besides that, we're just playing, right? Okay, there you are. Now I want to pull just a little bit of that over here and up here. And then I need a darker dark right here. And it's real dark right in here. Enough said. And there's another one of those puppies up here. And you know the chances are real good that this will end up being the better painting of the two. Why, do you ask? That's just the way it works. When you have nothing invested, now scumbling, which is just moving your brush along that outer edge, is giving me a little bit of a softer background. And I can come back in and blot just a little bit. And that softens that edge just a hair, which it would be if it were, you look at something that's totally silhouetted by the sun, it's going to look like that. It's going to have fuzzy edges. This needs a little bit of the orange just to warm that color up a little bit. Could add just a little bit of blue. I'm really feeling the need for some lightning right there because it's so bright. But lesson learned for the big painting. And I'll have my drawing so I'll know where things are going. Green pearl. Perfect. Here I'm taking a little bit of the darkish, brackish color, and I'm just speckling a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and come up here, about right here. I'm going to leave I'm leaving the area on that right there so that it will a little bit more closely resemble a light area. I didn't exactly get it there. Don't want any hard edges. Because I can come back and add more. Now we've got this other flower. Coming out like so. I'm doing some negative painting. That's where you paint around your subject. I'll let that move a little bit. Back the other way. Yeah, baby, come on and run. Alright, I'm going to let this dry and I'll be back. Alright guys, I have let this rest over the weekend. I'm going to back you out just a hair. That's pretty good. You've got it all. I've got this sitting up on those 2 Deco Art jars. And I have problems. Nothing insurmountable. Let's just not say problems. Let's say challenges that need to be resolved. Now I can either come in and make the background dark, which will leave this flower light. I could come in with a Chinese white and put a wash on there. Whatever I do, I need to help this flower stand out. Now I succeeded in all the edges being very loose. So that's a good thing, except over here and they're not, so we're not going to worry about that. But I've got some beautiful color going on in here that I really like, particularly when you turn it and you see the iridescence. See the little mica? But I need, for myself, I need to learn more about how these work. And being dye-based, I think, and watercolors being pigment-based, if they are in fact dye-based, no amount of lifting or water or anything is going to make that dye move like a traditional watercolor. Now I did get some white areas up, lighter areas up in here where I blotted it right after I put it on. So we're going to stop this now, and I'm going to move to the computer and show you a few things, a few tools I use. Alrighty, I'm back. Let me see if I can move that just a little bit. I didn't want to show you my whole desktop, but I did want you to be able to see my layers over here. The next thing I do is double click on background and just take the default layer 0. And the reason why you do that is if you have it set on background, it won't let you make any changes to that background. The next thing I'm going to do, which I sometimes forget, is I'm going to copy this layer. If I get this all set up for you. It's been a while since I've taught Photoshop, so forgive me. I'm a horrible teacher. No, I'm not. I'm a good teacher, but I use shortcuts and all that, so I'm not this. That's why I say this is not really a Photoshop class. Layer 0, I'm going to take it, I'm going to drag it down to this thing that said it has a page icon with corner turned up. Drag it, drop it, and I made a copy of layer 0. I'm going to hide that by clicking the eyeball, and I'm selected on layer 0 copy. As I told you earlier, I have a dilemma with the background, and it's not a huge dilemma, but again, since this is working image, I have selected the lasso tool, and I'm going to very roughly come around come up, around, and down. Now I've got, see the marching ants? That area is selected. Delete, and it takes out that background. Command D removes it, deactivates it. And now I'm going to come in, since this is a quickie deal, I'm going to come in and I clicked on the eraser tool. See how small that is? If you'll hit your bracket up key, and the bracket is on your keyboard. How about that? I'm going to increase this size a little bit by doing Command plus, and I just want to roughly get rid of this background. Okay, rough. When you did this in old Photoshop, old, I mean like Photoshop 2, you would end up with all kinds of pixelated lines. You couldn't use it for anything. But, okay, now I'm going to do Command left bracket. What happened? Well, I said oh, just left bracket. Not Command left bracket, just bracket. Sorry about that. I think I said Command before. Again, rough cut here. I can't tell right here what that's supposed to be, so I'll leave it. There's a little bit of background. Okay, y'all with me? We're going to ignore this hard line right here. V takes you back to the main tool. And now what I can do is, remember the piece of paper with the folded corner? I can click that and it makes a new layer, layer 1. Okay? Now I click on layer 1 and drag it under the layer 0 copy we're working with. Now, I can do, I never can, as many years as 25 I've worked with Photoshop. Command delete fills it with my background color, which is set in the color chooser as white. Option delete fills it with black. Look right there, you can see something I didn't get. Yeah, that's got to be right here. Flip back there. Tiny, tiny, tiny little brush. Come on, give me a bigger brush. There, that gets rid of that. Back to layer 1. And a little bit up there, but that's okay. We're not going to worry about that. Now then, let's see what my whole deal was. If you'll hold down the space bar, it turns to a hand and you should be able to move it, but that's okay. You can't. And I want it to be about 25%. Not that. That is 2,516%. 25. That's about right. I want y'all to be able to see it. Okay, I'm going to click on my color swatch box and I'm going to change the black. And that's kind of, I'm just going to flip it around in the color picker. I want something that's a little more watercolor paper color, which that is. That's kind of a grade down. Oh, you know what? I think I'm going to try blue. Kind of a grade blue. Okay, now delete. That's cool. That's because I changed the color earlier. I could go over here to my history and I can go back to, come on, fill layer, and I can go here, hit B again. I don't understand why that, oh, because that's my new background color. Okay. Delete. There. There we go. Go back to V to get the hand tool. What I want to try to do is get that flower to have more definition. That color is not bad by any stretch of the imagination. And then I could come back in with white. Okay. I can come back in, switch B. I can come back in with a real soft brush. Let's see what this does. Oh, you gotta be over here. You gotta make sure you're on the right layer. Now if I come back in with some white gouache, and I don't like the way that looks, that doesn't even give me an idea of what I'm trying to do. So I can make that come way down in size. It's too far. You're in the wrong layer again. You gotta watch that. Command Z. Now that I'm on the right layer, Command Z. And that is too light. So I'm going to come down a little bit in color tone. Needs to be the yellowish color because we want it to look all sunny. Okay. That's better. See, I could come back in there with that. And we're just talking about adding some highlights. Like, again, this is not... And the reason I'm doing it is because I forgot to leave the white. Hello. And if you're going to do watercolor, you got to remember to leave the white. But since we're kind of mixed media-ing, we don't have to worry about that so much. And I was getting bored when I started this flower down here, and when I get bored, I have to remind myself to quit. So the blue might work. Let's see, let's add another layer. Let's drag that layer back under there. Let's close layer 1, and let's see what a night sky looks like. Okay, delete. Another. Hello. Change the order. Delete. I hope y'all can't hear that. That was my stomach. That's not bad either. And you know what we can do? Or what I think I'm going to do? Is I'm going to start with this layer. And I'm going to darken it till I get in there. Now what I might do, close that out, come back here, E for eraser. I might blend that. I told y'all this is, because there's nothing wrong with the background that's there. It's just that I wanted that flower to pop. Now the other thing I could have done on that flower is make it dark, but I don't want the dark flower. I like it light and I want it very sparkly, and so I can do that, and I can keep some of this background. So in order to do that, I will come in behind the flower and I will negative paint with water all the way around this where I want, all the way around like I did with the brush. Then I'll come back in with light blue and I'll put light blue in here and help it merge into there. Now the key here is, will the ink, will the twinks move like regular watercolor? And that we don't know. So I'm going to stop recording now and go back to the watercolor. See you, bye. Okay, I'm back over at the workstation. I've got this upside down, and you guys can see it. I'm going to move it up just a little bit. I'm going to continue to work on it upside down. Now, as I just discussed, I'm going to wet the whole thing with water. This is my Isaby pedigree, and actually it's a cat's tongue. Let me show you. See how that comes? It's like I told you before, it's like a filbert that comes to a tip, a point. Anyway, I can't do anything to make the flower pop until I get the background toned down. So the first thing I'm going to do is wet my twinks. Move my water out of the way. Because you know what'll happen with water in the way. Water in the way, water in the way. I need some blue. Meridian blue. And while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and wet all of these down with my pipette. Don't you just love saying that word? Pipette. So very English. That's me, alright. Okay. Now we're just going to let those sit for a minute. My Meridian blue is here. It's a little more turquoise. Oh wait, here's Meridian. That may just be my perfect color. I could try some Mediterranean blue, which is this one, and wet it down real good so it'd be thin. And I have, ooh, Stargazer's awfully pretty. Oh wait, what's this one? That's Stargazer. Think, 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 think. Okay, Stargazer I like. Let's put, I like that better than the, I'm going to put just a little bit of the Winsor Newton Gum Arabic. I hope I don't spill it all over my painting. Okay. I just want just barest of drops. I'm taking my time here, so y'all bear with me. I'm thinking. I like to leave the mark of the artist, and that is down. It's not going anywhere, so that's a good thing that I like people to see where I'm going. Stargazer. That's fastly becoming one of my favorites. Now remember in the video I said I was going to just a little bit of that and some water. Now the Gum Arabic will hold the mica to the paper without a binder. I didn't mix that very much, and look how much this brush soaked up almost all of it. And duh, you didn't wet the whole thing first. So you're just going to have to wait right there. Another watercolor brush. And this is, oh poopy, oh, Low Cornell, there it is. Size 12, round. I'm going to come in, and I'm not going to go right up to the flower. I'm going to back off just a little. And I'm going to get it good and wet. Not going to scrub the paper a whole lot. I want to preserve as much of that paper character as I can. And believe it or not, you can damage watercolor paper if you're overly aggressive with it. Make sure you've got it all covered. We want it shiny. And I'm not sure where that ends, so I'm just going to go right in there. I'm going to sneak up on it. Now look at it from the side and you can see exactly the spots you missed. They will be dull, and now because I've got that on a tilt, the water was going down to the bottom. So I'm going to let this, I meant to get some Q-tips. I'm just going to slide this up here and let it sit flat for a minute, and I will go get my Q-tips. Have to go over to the oil department. I've got different departments in this room. Q-tips. Q-tips are great, and I don't have any of the pointed ones, but I want to get some. I'll move this out of the way. Move these over here. Now, when this starts to get not quite so shiny, which it is, it's beginning to soak in pretty good. I think what I'm going to do, while I'm here, I'm going to mix up a little more paint. Somebody wants me. And they can wait. Alright, here we go. Use the belly of the brush. That's why watercolor brushes are more expensive, is because the belly of that brush will hold a ton of liquid. I'm not adding any pressure. I'm just allowing the brush to do its job. And I'm going to very carefully ease it right up to that flower. Right down here. We don't want any hard edges. If you use the point in your watercolor brushes consistently, what you will do is wear them down. So use the side of your brush as much as you possibly can. And again, remember, I'm working with Twinkling H20s for the first time as a painting medium, meaning that I'm a little more traditional in the look I'm after. I'm wanting a little more of a traditional watercolor look. Let's see here. And you know what? I just said in the film that I wanted to leave this area kind of sunny. I'm just blotting with a sort of clean, and see, because I think these are dye based. If that were real watercolor, that color would immediately be gone. I'm going to try a little bit of the, whatever I said that was. Is that Bolivian? Meridian. Where's Bolivian? Rainforest. Bolivian is primary elements. Stargazer. beautiful, beautiful colors. Now my paper is still wet. Wet enough to accept a darker color. Skies are never one color. You'll have cerulean blue, which is a blue that has a little green in it. On one side you'll have a clearer reddish blue, ultramarine type blue, and then as you look overhead the lights change and you start getting into darker blues. Now this could be at sunset. Just got a wet brush now. I don't want any hard lines. It's interesting the way this follows the grain of the paper. Now I've got some interesting stuff going on here. Real soft. Real soft. I'm liking that feathery. Now see, that's pretty cool. Just letting the paint do what it wants to do. And then coming back up into this area. I'm going to let that be for a minute. Okay, now let's turn it right side up and see what we've got. Not too shabby. I've got variation in color. I've got the really dark nighttime blue. I've got the last of the sun is over here somewhere, and it's still shining on this flower and making it glow. And because I've got a contrast here, I think that I can work with this. And remember in the beginning of the video when I said that this was just a practice, I was just going to do some swatches? Well, you see what happens. Didn't used to. I don't want that to be a hard edge right there, which it may be already. I need to get a this is my brush carrier for everyday watercolor brushes. There's a scrubber. This is a, now let me get this out of the way. This is a cheap Joe's Fritch scrub, and what it is just real short, stiff bristles. I'm going to wet that. Now you've got to be careful with these because they will destroy your paper. Now if that was real watercolor pigment, I could come in and remove part of that. But if it's dye-based, it has soaked completely into the water, into the paper, and you won't be able to get it out. And it's softening just a hair, so that will at least work. Thank you, Mr. Fritch. Okie dokie. I just happen to have some almost dried up gouache. This is a Winsor Newton Chinese white. I'm going to put it right there. See if we can't. And what I did the other day was I put a drop of water in here before I capped it. And it helped. Won't help, however, if it glues the lid down. Just sit that little baby right there. Don't you move. Okay, I'm going to switch back to this is just an inexpensive one of my mixed media brushes. I need a little bit of water. There was a little bit of yellow in this well, and these are Twinkling H20s. Can y'all see what I'm doing? Now what I'm going to do is see what happens if I come in here, and now I need my fancy dancy razors. Now that is an off-white. It's got a little bit of yellow mixed in with it. Now if I want more straight white, I can dip into what I put on the edge of this little well. That's straight white. And I can come in here and paint some areas white that are actually whiter than the watercolor paper was to begin with, but it's kind of similar. Now, the old masters used a lot of gouache. They didn't so much worry about the leaving of the whites on the paper. That area is actually a little bit of blue. A little bit of sky. Don't overwork your pigment. Let the pigment, and this is true in any media you work in. See, that was a wet spot, and I just dropped in some of that darker blue from here, and it's very effective that way. Now I can come back in and re-wet some of these colors. This is the rainforest. And I need a little more of that because I want it more concentrated. Because this stem, and I'm not going to paint the stem in its entirety. I want it to have variation. Remember, variation. Just work with what you've got and allow some of those previous layers to show through. So now we're going to come down here like this. Just let some of that show just the way it is. Now if you need it darker, you might try adding just a little bit of that blue from the sky. And then this. And then this. Capiche? And we want do a little dry brushing. That means just drag your brush. Give it some visual texture. Remember, we're in watercolor, so you don't get the same effects that you get with other things. Now this is a flower, part of the flower, and it wants to be whitish. Whoops. That's what you call don't clean your brush out, goose. It's okay, we'll just pull this color over here just a little. And we want whitish. I don't know how successful I'll be at covering up that brackish green. This is fairly straight gouache, so it may cover pretty good. And there's nothing wrong with the colors that are in here. Nothing wrong at all. It's just that they needed just a little bit of a punch. There's a little bit of pink in there. And a little bit of yellow in here. I'm leaving the halo around the flower that's kind of that yellowish where the feathering went into it. I'm leaving that because I like it. And I need this to be a little bit bigger. This is a size 6. I pulled up just a little bit of that gouache on the point of this brush so that I can lighten this. Are you bored yet? I want a little bit of yellow. I'll warm that up a little bit. There. Orangey yellow. And this is cooler, so I want to get rid of some of that. Let's do some of the Starburst right here. Let's cool that down just a hair. I didn't get that as, you know what, it's bigger on this side. There. I've kind of got a little bit of rainforest and a little bit of that dark blue, whatever I said that was. I'm going to come back in here with it, restate that line. And this is more of a rounded bottom like that. Doesn't matter at all. Clean your brush. damp brush, just come in there and soften that edge just a little. Soften right in there. Perfectamundo. Now, if you want a richer color, add just a touch of red to this one because it's more in the light. Happy with that. Looks good. Okay, now we're going to give it a little bit of white. Whoops, need more water. A little bit of white. Look at that hard edge I've got there. A little white gouache, maybe. We'll see where that takes us. Now, I accidentally touched the flower bud that was wet, and so of course it's bleeding, but that's not a big deal. That's a happy accident. Now, what's happening here, folks, is that by the nature of whatever all these pigments are made of, the white gouache is, man oh man, it's allowing those colors to glow, and the under layers are glowing with color. And that is a cool accident. Happy, happy, happy accident. And if y'all catch me saying we're going to put an almighty tree in here, I want you to slap me. I tried to watch some Bob Ross the other night, just because I never had. And I thought, okay, let's see what all the fuss was about, because I completely missed that craze. I could not get past the almighty trees. And let's put an almighty cloud right here. Alright, Bob, you just go right ahead and do that. Let me know how that worked for you. That turned out real good right there. So now we've got some right in here. And that's really a little bit more of the yellow, the toned down white. And let's see. Take your time. You're not in a race. Nobody's going to take it away from you. What I did right there was adjusted where that petal was. It was making the stem look a little awkward. Because the petal is actually coming down over that leaf, or that bud. I've never used white gouache before. That's interesting. It's an opaque white. It is watercolor. It is a water media, which means it will lift if you come back into it. And now we need a little bit of a, I'm just using up some things that are in this palette. A little bit of a warm purple color. Now the color that I put on was from the palette, and it is allowing the underneath layer of pink and yellow to show through, but that stuff went right down into the paper and will not allow me to soften it. So I'm going to come back over to my gouache and paint right up next to that. And we've got some pink, which I don't have, yeah, that one is sort of. I'm mixing that with just a little bit of the green. Let's see what I get. Not bad. Now see, with regular watercolor you could put your brush in and it'll do that. So I did get to that one did work. It worked quite well. Now I need a little bit of yellow. Come right back in here. And that is white. But it's not going to be stark white because it is allowing those colors to blend underneath. Very nice, I like it. I need a little bit of blue. I need a little bit of darker blue where that, I am mumbling, I am so sorry. This is creating a shadow because the sun is behind it, and this is that leaf going under the other petal. And this is also that same bluish color. It's the stem. And we have Go back to my darker color. And by the nature of light refraction, the little nubby stem right here is not lined up with its partner over here. And the same here. This is not lined up perfectly with the shadow behind it. Some of these colors soak into the paper a whole lot more than others. And I want that blue to be darker right here. And this is darker here. That's part of the shadow. A little bit of pink right here. When all else fails, remember you can wet it first and then drop in your color. That will avoid some of the hard line knowing that these aren't traditional watercolors does not make them good or bad. That is not a quality comment. That is an artistic comment with the opportunity to learn a new medium. Media is plural and medium is single. Get in there. And what that means is I'm learning to appreciate this and the white gouache because it's different than traditional watercolor. It is truly more of a mixed media. And I like that. And I was just taking a break because I kind of forgot where I was going. So we have a pinkish all through here. Kind of darker. Notice I'm using the belly of the brush. Didn't learn to do that until this one was already kind of ruined, but hey, live and learn. That beautiful color glowing through. Now we get a little more blue. I like that dry brush look I just got. So much that I think I'll just leave it alone. Leave alone. That's what Randy's mother used to say. Leave alone. Kind of should have wet that first. Combination dry brush. The brush just hits the tops of the weave on the paper. And gives you a visual texture, which is excellent. It's what you want. You don't want everything to be completely spelled out for your viewer. You want them to, from a distance, see a flower with pretty colors, they think, and then when they walk up to it, you want them to just lose their breath because there's so much surface detail that it takes their breath away. And I can't really get in there very good because the angle for the camera. And then there's just a little bit of a glow over here. I'm just glazing this a little. Kind of a pinkish. Yeah, I've got pink, which we're using this fuchsia color. It's coming right up in here. I love the juxtaposition of the way the white gouache is working with these strong colors. Some pink right in here. Alrighty, let's put a little bit of a darkish. Some pinkish right here. Whoa, I got some that time. No problem. Just work it in. No mistakes. Now you can paint watercolor totally realistic if you choose, and you can fix it so that nothing that touches bleeds into the other until you have something that resembles a photograph, and there is nothing wrong with that. However, I always want to see the hand of the artist. That's why I like to see what's going to happen when you do get some bleeds. I need a darker purple. Got one in. Tone that down just a little bit with some of the corally color. Should be a perfect color. taking a break. Hey guys, I'm back. It's been a couple days, and while I'm 90% very pleased with this, I'm showing you the shimmer. I also reset the white balance on my camera, and I like it a lot better at auto. I don't know how it got switched, but that's a different story. This is just a red piece of cellophane, and what red does is it filters out all the color. So this will help me see if I've got a full range of the, I can get it up where you can see it. This is just a paint chip sample, but it shows not white but a very light to not black but a very dark. But what it kind of shows me is I don't want everything to be all mid-tone, okay? And we all have a tendency to do that. You want either mostly lights or mostly darks, and it looks like I'm mostly dark. What I don't have is any of the lightest lights. So because the Twinkling H20s are, because they are movable somewhat, every time I was putting white gouache on top of it, I was pulling some color from underneath. So in other words, the white gouache isn't really white. It's got a tinge of another color. So what I'm going to do, since this is mixed media pretty much, I'm going to take some DecoArt acrylic paint and I'm going to work on those whites. This is one that's just about empty, and I have it over in my pile to reorder from DecoArt. This one is opaque white, and I'm going to put that in here in my mixing bowl, and I'm going to add just a little yellow to it. You can't get any whiter than white. So if you're using white and it's still not really popping for you, add a little yellow to it, and that will make it pop out. Does that make sense? A warm white will give you a whole lot, man. I'm using a worn out bristle brush around, and the reason I'm using that is because I do want some dry brushing. So this brush is almost worn out, which makes it perfect for this. And then I'm going to come back in, white part of that back. Then come back in with a little bit of the yellow and just hit. Now see, the acrylic will pretty much seal what's going on under it. By doing this wiping motion, I am removing some of the opacity. I've got this propped up so I can see it too. Move it a little bit closer so y'all can see where I'm working. So I'm adding some white right in here, some creamy white. And then come back and soften my edges. I want this flower to look like it's curling. So this would be my high point, and this is where it's receding back and giving it a curl like this. And you do that with value. So adding a little white is giving this just a little bit more form. Now I've got some more white that I want to pull out right in here. Very light touch, not much paint. And here where I corrected that is kind of bleeding through, so we'll just do that. Cover it up. Now this is what pushes a piece from so-so to more of a wow. And again, it's not imperative that you have a wow. Quit anytime you feel like it and go on to something else. You don't have to belabor over things like I tend to do. It took me a lot of years painting in oils and watercolors and pastels to get to the point where I knew how to push a piece to its final 10 or 20% of being really happy with it. And so once you've pushed yourself to do that, you don't really want to go back to, I mean, I will, you know that, you've seen my stuff. Sometimes I just get bored with them and quit. And I've got some little white, I've already got that yellowish in there. Now the yellow that I added back into this opaque white is Twinkling H20. It was some that was left in the palette. Now that dry brushing is giving me a look. Let me see if I can get it where you can see it. It's giving me some lines. They're very faint. Now the reason that something like that that's so hard to see from a distance is when someone walks into a gallery or a room that has your painting, you want it to really pop from across the room. I mean, you want it to grab their attention from across the room. And you do that with value. It has to be your lights and darks have to really grab them. If it's all one muted tone like it was with the red over it, you know, it's just another ho-hum picture. And then when they get up close to it, you want there to be detail that you can't see from a distance, so that the person who owns that painting will always find something new in it to admire, to hold their attention. So that's why the extra 10% on something that is intended to be wall art, I hate that term, but it says what we want it to say. The little brush strokes and the little, I mean, you can barely see those, but you can see them because this brush didn't fill in between, so it's just barely there, but you can see it up close. That's all I'm trying to say. This poor brush is so worn out. Okay, I'm mixing a little bit of purple that was left over, and I'm mixing it with the white. And that's a little too much. I didn't want that much. I do want some pink. Mixing that with the white. And I'm going to have to clean out my palette really good when I get through because of the acrylic and the gouache in this. Now if I were going to enter this in a watercolor show, you have to read the prospectus, and that's the rules, very carefully, because it will either say water media, in which that case this might qualify, and sometimes they will tell you just traditional watercolors, in which case this would not. But sometimes in some shows, water media, which is anything that you mix water with, like acrylic or the H2Os, is acceptable. So to avoid embarrassment, always read the prospectus. Oh, that's cool. Just adding a little more texture in there. think that's better. Better, better, better. Now let's see if we can do the same over here. I'm getting a good dry brush there. See if I can pull that in where you can see right here. You can see what's going on underneath those strokes, because this brush is just allowing the paint to hit on the top of that texture, on that watercolor texture, the paper. And I think I can very lightly. I added just a little more water, and you put a little bit of a wash over the top of that to kind of tone back some of that darker color. Just kind of work it in. Now I want to come back and get just a little bit of that pink. And I'm going to bring that in right in here. Now guys, this is a white orchid. And I know a lot of people go, you can't paint white. Look at all the color in this. It's got yellow, it's got blue and purple, yellow from the sun, and the blue and the purple from the sky. Of course you can put color in. In fact, painting all white is really fun. We don't care too much about what goes on over here because that's leading your eye off the page. I think I said earlier, be really careful with your white edges or your hard edges. And a hard edge is where you want to draw attention. So one of the few hard edges I have is right here. And if you'll notice, that is right in the thirds. If you do a tic-tac-toe on this piece of paper, that's going to be in one of the focal points. So I do have a hard edge here, but all these others are soft, which means they're just not quite defined. They're a little bit nebulous. What that does is it draws your attention to there. Then your eye can go around and explore the rest of it. So that's why I've got one of my darkest darks and my lightest lights together right here. Together again. Painting is a series of contrast. Dark, light, hard, soft. Oh, bright color and a toned down color. That would be chroma. Like I told you with the white, if it's white, you can't get any whiter than white. So you either have to be darker around it, or you add some yellow, which adds a real warm tint and makes that white appear whiter. So what I'm doing with this white is adding contrast. Add some water and then come back in and soften that paint. Just drag it down. Let's see if we can get some lines. And I want some more of that hot pink right here. The other thing that's happening is that I had the correct colors I was happy with in these spots, but they were a little bit too distinct. So what this is allowing me to do is blur the edges between the different colors. They're still there, they're still showing up. The more white I add to, or the more water I add to the acrylic paint, the more translucent it becomes, so you can still see what's under it. It's just a little bit more subtle. I want to do the same thing down here, even though this little guy is not the star of our show. Again, from a distance we want, I'm just going to scratch in that white. Got a little bit of the pink in it. And what that's going to do is add just a little bit of the mica. This brush has already been abused, so I'm using fingers, whatever it takes. Capiche? I've got some more of that yellow back in here now. Warm this one up just a little. That's a glaze of something that was left. Just dancing around a little bit. Giving this just a little more life. Just a hair here and there. So keep your old cheap brushes, they always come in handy. But just take care that you don't get all your brushes in this shape. Use anything you've got that helps you make your statement. And you want a variety of color. And here's a good place for another lesson. This area right here was basically the same color, same bluish color. So I came back in and with just a touch of purple, I can come back in and add some purple, and it's the same value as the blue. So from a distance you will see all one tone. And when you get up closer to it and closer to it, you'll start to see, whoops, some purple. Where's my brush? Right in here. So that's one of those things that gives you a little added boost. I'm getting happier with this. I wish I had a good strong orange. I mean, of course I've got good strong orange, but I'll tell you what I can do. Traditional watercolor to the rescue. This is my koi set. Now, if these are your good watercolors, don't use a brush that's been in acrylic. You don't want to mix your traditional watercolors with your acrylics. Keep them separate. Push and pull. Add a little bit. Take it away. Add a little bit more. Take it away, let it dry, and then put some more on. Okay, I just pulled over a bucket of neons. These are acrylic and Americana multi-surface. This is kind of a greenish yellow, and I want just a dot. Leaning Tower of Pizza. I'm going to get some more white. Now what? And I've got too much paint on my brush. Perfect. This is a real hot area where that leaf, the sun is shining through, and I want that to really pop. Again, very much dry brush. I had already laid the foundation down with the H2Os. So this is doing nothing but just giving that top layer a little bit of a pop, but it's letting what's underneath it show through. Bringing it to life, bringing it to life. Now I need some blue, so I'm going to do, well, that one's blue. Hello, it's just blue. 1 drop. And that's too much. You can't get any less than that. I'm going to make my own blue-green with that neon yellow and that blue. And I want just a little bit of that right in here. I didn't overmix it, because I'm more of an impressionist, and I like to see my pigments rather than just smush them and smush them and smush them. I like to see a little bit of the yellow and see a little bit of the blue. Take a Q-tip, dampen it just a little. Come in and soften those edges just a hair. This is the beauty of mixed media, folks. Use anything you've got to get the result you want. Unless you are in competition somewhere, then you have to go by their rules. Which is one reason why I quit competing. Because all you guys were having so much fun with your mixed media, and I was limiting myself to all one media. Like soft pastels, could only be soft pastels. Can't have anything else in it. Well, guess what? You guys have a lot more fun. And so do I, now that I've relieved myself of that pressure. I'm picking up just enough iridescence from the H2Os to make this interesting. I'm going to put just a little bit of that right up here. A little more of the yellow. And a little bit right here. And some white and the yellow right there. Boy, I missed that all the way around. Paint with whatever you've got in your hand. I'm going to put a little bit of that blue yellow right in here. Right in here. This is kind of a scumble what I'm doing. I'm just brushing very lightly. I want some of that yellow right in here. That's really making it punch from what it was before. I would have never expected this neon mixture to have worked as well as it is working. Making my white pop. That was my stomach and I just fed it. This is the Q-tip I was just using in the blue. Worked great. Put down just a little bit of that blue variation. Remember that. Repetition with variation. I'm going to dry that a little bit. Just a little more white. This is straight white. Come back in here. They say it takes two people to paint a painting. One to paint it and another one to tell them to stop. And I think I'm at that point. So, I'm going to sign it. Watercolor, I usually use a lead pencil. Let's see if this works. Yeah. All signed. Now what I will do is let this rest again overnight, and I may come back in and push that white just a little bit further. So I'm going to call that quits for today. Let me back this back out so you can see it. Oops, wrong way. There you have it. I'm very pleased with my first Twinkling H20s. Over and out.